Welcome to another week of Brew Sky's Booze News, where we give you the breakdown of the alcoholic industry stories that we arbitrarily find most interesting. I'm Mike Morgan, and you, sir?
Brett Kollmann-Baker. Cheers.
My glass is bigger.
I mean, it wouldn't be a bar if it wasn't there wasn't a glass measuring contest at some point in time.
Absolutely.
So, as always, check out the other stuff we're doing. Brew Sky's network also has an oral history of craft beer called the Brew Sky's Happy Hour. We interview all the big luminaries within craft beer. We've gone from the 70s and 80s up to the 90s. We're working on the next season where we cover the 90s. We have a nice little interlude, a 1.5 season that we're putting out now, where we're kind of talking about why these big brands got diluted in the first place and how they rose to power and prominence and all the fun drama in between. Yep. Like, subscribe, comment. That's really the best way you can support us at this point in time. The more you engage with us, the better the algorithm works and the more content we can keep making for you all. So please hit us up with any questions that you have. We do questions of the week at the end of every episode, so stick around. And from last week's episode, if you remember, we were asking for your favorite beer drinking songs. Please, below, tell us some more of what you like. We're going to keep working on this Brew Sky's Happy Hour drinking playlist. It'll be a lot of fun, and if we get enough songs, we can do a power hour.
Nice. So that wraps up this episode.
We'll see you next week. No, actually, we're going to start this week like we start every booze news with the news of Bud Light.
Oh my God. Not all of them. There's some episodes I don't hate that much. What's going on with Bud Light?
The volume declines. It looks like we're stable.
Yeah.
Negative 29.5%.
Patient has stabilized.
Now,
there's been amputations. There's definitely some organs that aren't going to recover, but the patient has stabilized.
At least they're still alive.
Whatever. Yeah, Bud Light sort of like still alive in a semi-alive state, like Mitch McConnell. Maybe that's like the best thing, you know?
They're a zombie. They're a zombie brand now.
Yeah, sure.
Well, Bud Light, what the industry insiders are saying now is that things have stabilized, but this is only the beginning. The finger is in the dam right now, so to speak. The little Dutch boy that is the president of AB InBev, right. That dam's about to burst all around him, and I'm going to tell you why. It's because
very racist to call him little Dutch boy, but sure, go ahead.
He's Brazilian.
It's even worse.
I just don't understand. Fall resets. So grocery stores, big chain accounts, corporate buyers. Mm-hmm. There's 2 times per year where they change what beer they sell. They do it in the fall and they do it in the spring. The spring is the big reset. It's where they look at every single thing they're doing, they get rid of anything that's not performing, and they give more space to the stuff that is doing well. The fall is usually like, oh, okay, you're going to get rid of this brand because it's not performing, you want to swap it with this, we'll let you do that in the fall. It's minor changes from brands that are trying to get ahead of the data before the springtime comes. Well, insiders are saying this could potentially be the craziest fall reset season of all time because Bud Light's doing so bad, they're going to want to jettison Bud Light sets to increase Modelo and Miller sets.
Holy God.
Which doesn't happen in the fall, which will then further drive Bud Light sales numbers down. And then the spring comes around and numbers being down more means more Bud Light sets are going to get cut, which is going to further drive it down. So the insiders are saying what you predicted all along is the death spiral has started.
Yep. Well, I'm pretty good at predicting stuff, quite frankly.
Mike Morgan, the prognosticator.
Yeah, I'm the Nostradamus of the bar.
Was it Nostradamus that had the big glass, or was that Rasputin?
He had a whole, it was like he had a mug. And it was the secret to his wisdom.
Do you measure volume from the base, or where the glass? Never mind. We can just move on. I swear this show's not normally like this. We're much more professional.
That's a lie.
Mexican Marines. They found a whole
Mexican Marines?
Yeah.
They're not even Americans. How can they be Marines?
Well, the Mexicans, the Marines, they found 7,200 bottles of mezcal. Can you guess what they were actually filled with that wasn't mezcal?
Well, it's either going to be a no. Like, is there cocaine in there somehow?
Well, it is drugs. It's liquid methamphetamine. They were filled with liquid meth. 7,200
Wow.
bottles. 9.2 tons in total. It was bound for Australia. It was 9.2 tons total. That brings the total of liquid meth seized that was bound for Australia up to 124 tons.
Wow.
So Australians love Mexican methamphetamine.
If we're being brutally honest, I just thought how much I would like to have a shot of liquid meth.
I knew the show was going off the rails as soon as we started talking about Dutch dams. We were in trouble right from the get-go. $1.1 billion of USD dollars, that is, has been frozen in assets of Mexican cartels because apparently there has been links that they're now discovering going back a decade plus that the Mexican cartel has basically run the tequila industry in Mexico.
Really?
And it's been a giant money laundering scheme for a very long time now. But that is that's slowly starting to get unraveled more, which is how they're able to fill a whole bunch of bottles with a whole bunch of liquid meth.
It doesn't shock me. You know, there's a lot of things about. I mean, the war on drugs is the biggest colossal failure in the history of humanity. And
The war on communism was pretty bad too.
it was also bad. I think ultimately, though, the war on drugs has probably done more harm. I mean, the number of nations that have been destabilized. But I read a while back, like, there is this theory that purported not by, some conspiratorial idiots on the internet, but by some economists, that, like, the reason when the market collapsed in 2007 and 8, our housing market collapsed and collapsed our economy, the real primary reason that we did not go into a depression was drug money. Like, there was liquidity in the market that was coming from laundered drug money that actually kept the economy running.
So the best thing I can do for America is more drugs? Is
Best
that
thing-
what I'm hearing?
Sane policy would actually be great because Mexico is really just a narco state at this point. But sure, tequila, I think, is the point. Is it better than liquid meth or not?
I think it is, but Australia would disagree.
I'm going to have to do a taste test.
Join us next week as we rip shots of liquid methamphetamine.
We've
live.
done Malort. Next, shots of liquid meth.
Budweiser, big news this week. Budweiser, right? When we're talking Anheuser-Busch InBev, that Budweiser. They have
Heard of 'em.
jettisoned 8 craft beer brands this week.
Yeah.
Big ones, too. We're talking...
We're talking crafty beer, crafty brands.
It was Kraft at one point in time, became Crafty, and then has been sold to another corporation. They dropped 8 brands. Shock Top, which they
Really?
created. That's a Crafty brand.
It was always a shitty beer, but that's sold very well at some point.
Yeah, it
Kind of
did.
over the top, citrusy. I would imagine that New England IPAs really cut into the sale of Shock Top because it was the first real. It was like this orange as hell kind of beer.
You know, I like this theory.
Yeah, I come up with
American
ones.
wheats are the original hazy IPA because they're the
That one in
citrusy, they're
particular.
hazy.
Right.
But I mean, Blue Moon's not that far off either.
No,
It's citrus forward. It was trying to be a
Right.
Belgian wit, but Americanized, which means a little sweeter and blander.
Yeah, I don't hate Blue Moon. I don't drink it, but I don't hate it. I mean, for like one of those large mass crafty beers,
It's fine.
Fine.
It's fine. Shock Top, Breckenridge, Blue Point, 10 Barrel, Red
God,
Hook.
Breckenridge was huge.
Yep, they
Red Hook was like their original crafty brand.
Yep, Widmer, Square Mile Cider,
Oh,
and
that was
Highball
also
Energy.
early.
All have been sold to Tilray, Canada's largest cannabis corporation. They bought it all for, can you guess how much? I'll give you a hint. They made this. All these brands combined did over 500,000 barrels of beer last year.
$3 billion.
85 million.
Jeez.
They bought 8 brands that did over 500,000 for 85 million.
I would have written a check.
Just 5 years ago, that amount of volume would have gone for over $500 million.
Yeah.
So the fact that all these brands were
Yeah,
that far discounted.
numbers up.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, but I guess at this point, what is the value of those brands? I mean, if you're not selling brewing equipment capacity, Red Hook is a very storied brand. Widmer was very storied brand. And Red Hook was like the first, they were one of the first craft breweries.
Yep.
And one of the first to make it big, and they were the very first that was acquired by AB. Wasn't even AB InBev at the time, I don't think. It was just AB.
It was very early on.
And so they were acquired because they understood, Anheuser-Busch understood that the future involved craft, and the craft they viewed as a threat. So it was their first foray into acquiring breweries rather than just trying to put them out of business. So it's interesting that that's really kind of a, I don't know, that's an interesting turning point in history that they're going to sell off those brands.
Yeah,
And cheap and to our neighbors in the Great White North.
Yeah, they did do it cheap. They jettisoned about half their total craft brands, and it for cheap, but for cash. So they either were really hard up for cash, and they just needed $85 million, which seems like a paltry sum for a $50 billion company.
How do you even live on that?
You know, it's hard to say. From the other side, though, for Tilray, how do you like this move?
I don't know that it was smart. I mean, even if it was even if we're calling it a bargain, what do they get for it? Because you have the copyright, you have the branding, you have some history, which I don't know that anybody gives a shit about anymore. You're not really getting the same. I mean, it's not coming with the distribution, correct?
No, the distributors will come along if they want to change that. All that should track with it.
Okay, so you think you get the same? You think you're selling, or you're telling me that you're selling the store space with it?
Yes, that will travel with it. Those points of distribution. That's not to say you're not going to lose them in the fall or the spring during reset time.
Right.
But yeah, you will have those initially.
What I also don't understand, having traveled in Canada a fair amount, and God damn, it's a beautiful country, but its beer situation is fucking weird.
Yep.
Some of the best beers that I've had in my life have been in Quebec, because they're very like French influenced, and there's a lot of like wild yeast, and they're brewing some brilliant beers in Quebec. But the distribution is even more fucked up in Canada than it is here in the U.S. So you can make brilliant beers in Canada, and it's hard to get them out.
Well, it's hard to get beer up to Canada, too. Exporting to Canada is damn near impossible.
I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I mean, they seem to be very locked down.
Yes.
Labatt's is a highly mediocre beer, and there's a reason why all of Canada drinks it, because they don't have that many options. Their distribution system is we would say in the law, just fucked. It's Latin.
I don't necessarily think Tilray is buying this so much as to get into the craft space, which I think that's a big part of it. Is they're now getting cash positive, ideally, businesses. They're going to generate some money. Cannabis is in a weird bloated space and everything's overvalued, so that helps edge that.
It was overpriced.
Yep. And but I think bigger strategically in the long run, this gets them facilities dotting all of America from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast.
Where if it's legal to sell a cannabis drink.
Yep, now it's just plug and play. No matter where your facility is, I can make a cannabis drink on the same exact equipment that I'm making an alcoholic drink, but keep the alcohol and the cannabis separate. Boom.
One of the same reasons that there's been an uptick in vape shops.
Yes.
It's acquiring the retail spaces to sell weed.
Yes.
Yeah. It's highly, yeah, okay.
It's highly speculative.
I mean,
you're right.
it might be a good idea, but it is highly speculative.
Are they getting into money laundering, you think?
Perhaps.
Maybe this is how you
It's
make all
really-
that federally legal in the U.S.
Every week, there's a declining number of things that I understand how you make money in. Money laundering is still one of them.
That is a really good point. The older I've gotten as well, I just don't understand how anyone makes money ever doing anything, unless you already have a bunch.
Well, it's gotten harder and harder. That's the only real way to make money in America now, is be born with it.
Well, speaking of being born with money, Miller has bought their very first spirits brand. Miller of Miller
Thank
Coors.
God.
They
I
bought.
was waiting.
Now I'm
Now I can finally drink liquor.
Blue Run Spirits out of Georgetown, Kentucky,
Yeah.
has sold to Miller for an undisclosed amount of money, and I'm sure it was fucking a lot because at the end of the article where they're talking about them selling, they talked about the capital partners from both sides that helped solicit the sale and the lawyer partners from both sides. There was a long list of people involved that weren't just these two companies, so there was a lot of money involved. However, what is the greasiest thing about this whole situation, and I want you to know, it's very greasy. Blue Run Spirits, who's known for their bourbon and whiskey, rye whiskey, has never distilled a single drop of their own spirits.
Oh,
they're a
fantastic. Why
marketing
I'd never
brand.
heard of them, and
they're a fucking marketing brand that's just buying stuff from MGP, like every other new distillery that's opening nowadays. And somehow they spun up a marketing brand, not even a product, not skills, not IP, nothing but
Contract distilling on a. I miss every fucking week.
to me, they're nothing more than P.T. Barnum. You're out. You're selling clowns in a circus.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's ridiculous.
One of these days you'll get it, Mike. I know you're distracted now. The opposite of athletes are we. Anyway, I think this is what's wrong with American spirits and American bourbon is the fleece has been pulled over every single person's eyes that's overpaying for these brands that they're not making it. It's not craft. They're not artisans. They're buying crap that's already made and tricking you into paying more money.
Yeah.
Buy the cheapest bourbon you can get.
It's
that tastes good.
entirely
That's it.
it's entirely marketing. Right. Yeah, there's even like Buffalo Trace used to be like a semi-budget brand.
Yeah, and they're amazing.
And it's really good bourbon. The bourbon didn't change. It's just like douchebags latched onto it and the marketing changed.
You could buy a handle for less than $30 not that long ago.
Yeah. And now it's like impossible to find it.
Yep.
And yeah.
I remember getting my first bottle of Eagle Rare because it was just on the shelf. And it wasn't that expensive at the time. I think it was like $34.99 or even $30 for a bottle of Eagle Rare. Thinking like, oh, okay, this is fine. I bought it and I tried it. And I'm like, yeah, this is okay. And
It's nice bourbon.
Yeah, it's nice. It's just Buffalo Trace aged 2 more years. And now you can't get it anywhere. And people are overpaying, paying $150 plus for this Eagle Rare. And it's just fine.
We used to drink Eagle Rare. I mean, when we go back, I'm not going to say the year because fuck you. But, I used to attend bar at this Ramada Inn. And at the end of the night, the bartenders would do, would do the end of the shift drink, which was more
as is
like
tradition.
5 or 6 of them. But
Also as tradition.
we would drink Eagle Rare, and we would drink Eagle Rare because it was like a really good buy at the time. It was something that we could steal from the bar, and without anybody noticing that much, because it was a relatively inexpensive bourbon, but it was a high quality bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's crazy how much it's changed. That now it's this whole ape shit thing, and the liquid hasn't changed. It's the same bourbon. It was good back then, but we drank it because it was good, and also because nobody noticed when half a bottle of it went away.
The real value in spirits at this point in time, I feel like, is just you need to just ignore bourbons and whiskeys. You're not going to get the value there anymore.
No.
You need and avoid tequila. It's the same thing. A lot of it's overpriced. To me,
Although drink scotch.
Scotch, but Scotch has always been expensive,
Yes,
though, but
it's
it's
always
fantastic. To me, if you really want to get inroads and you want to be ahead of the it crowd and the curve, rum aged rums, good rums, not that spiced bullshit that you drink in college, or brandy, cognac, Armagnac, all that stuff.
Man, I never got into brandy, but I'll try it again.
A lot of brandy gets maligned in the U.S. too because it's like that sweet syrupy shit is sold as brandy in the U.S., but that's not brandy.
Yeah, that's
Get
how
the good stuff from France. Whew, also can be a little pricey though. I think really like rum has such a storied history in the U.S. A lot of it bad. A lot of it's tied to the sugar industry, which is rife with inequity and awfulness throughout human history. But rum is a very distinctively American thing.
Yes.
Well, because we made it an American thing, which Americans like to do.
Right.
But rum, I think, is ripe for a really great revival like what bourbon's seeing. And I think that's where if you're going to invest knowledge in being an expert in something and enjoying a brown spirit, that's where I would put my time personally. But if you want to stick with the brown spirits, what's really growing, Asian whiskeys. That's getting hot. So if you're looking to get in and try to flip some money in the bourbon world, India is really hitting some bangers right now. China is really starting to come on strong, and Japan is really leading the pack, but a lot of Japanese stuff is starting to get outpriced. So if you want to try to find the next thing in bourbon, Indian bourbon.
So first of all, China, fuck off. Don't buy anything made in China, period. What Japanese whiskey, I've had some of those, and Japanese whiskey, the ones that I've had are predominantly Scotch. But they've been good. They've been a very good smoky Scotch. What does Indian whiskey taste like?
I'm not extremely familiar with it, actually. Just reading this article that was coming up talking about the growth of Asian spirits, and I've read a couple times before that Indian bourbon is getting a lot of investment from the government and from
It's not called whiskey. It's specifically called Indian bourbon.
Well, it probably is whiskey. It's probably not bourbon. Because it's not American made and blah, 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 all the bourbon.
Well,
things.
as we've covered, it doesn't have to be. They can call it bourbon if they want.
Well.
And it may be sweet as hell.
It could be. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, do your own research, as they like to say, right?
Right. Yeah. Just like on vaccines. It works out great.
We didn't cover it last week, but the grape harvest in France, looking okay.
Good. Good for France.
There's a heat wave going through right now.
Yeah.
That's actually not a bad thing for wine.
Yeah, we've talked about that in the past, how a lot of these grape varieties do better in extreme heats than we expected.
Yes, and it usually leads to sweeter wines, more sugar, sweeter grapes, which means more alcohol in the wine, fruitier wines, which is what Napa's known for, Napa wines. The French usually like them a little bit more acidic and balanced, but Americans, we love our boozy wines.
More balanced as well. But sure.
Well, next time you go to France, be on the lookout for the 2023 vintage.
Everything burns and the sugar count goes up. Let's all get drunk. The end is near.
Can you guess the busiest time of year? God damn it. You got me thrown off my game. Can you guess the busiest time of the week for restaurants? What period of food service is the busiest time of week and what day?
Well, I mean, fuck.
I don't know how to define restaurants. I'm just pulling this from
I would assume it would be a Saturday evening, but if you're asking this question, then maybe Thursday evening?
Well, it used to be for a very long time Friday lunch.
I could see that, yeah,
but the pandemic...
Business lunch.
Yep, the pandemic threw that into the trash.
Right.
Now, the busiest time for restaurants, 10% of all restaurant revenue across the U.S. comes during this 4-hour period from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Saturday brunch.
Wow.
Yep, Saturday brunch is the single busiest time to go out to a restaurant right now.
Jesus.
Isn't that wild? People just love getting fucking day drunk. Just getting blasted before noon. On a Saturday.
I mean, I'm not going to say I haven't done it a lot in life, but I kind of tend to hate those Saturdays when I do that. Like, I regret them.
Oh, yeah, because you get nothing done the rest of the day.
Yeah. But have you been to New Orleans?
No.
Yeah, that blows me away. You haven't been to New Orleans. There is a place down there that, very famous for its brunch, and it's one of the few brunches that I really love, but it's also one of those places where, like, you go and you drop, $300 later, you've had brunch.
Yeah.
Which is just hurts me.
Well, if you're going to spend that much too, I would get good and drunk. That's the only way I'm going to feel good about spending that much money.
Well, yeah, that's part of it.
So our question of the week comes from.
Hey, can I ask you a question, Malik, before you get there?
Sure.
Update on Anchor Steam. So what happened with Anchor Steam is that they were acquired by some pieces of shit named Sapporo, and Sapporo then changed all of the iconic branding. They then cut back the distribution. They then announced that they were going to stop producing America's first craft beer altogether. And then the people, the union labor at Anchor Steam that respected the history, they said, these idiots don't understand the importance of this beer and the marketability of this beer, and we want to buy this company that we work at and continue to make this institutional American craft beer.
Give us a chance. Let us buy it. Please, just give us a chance.
And Sapporo, these pieces of shit, said, okay, you have like 2 weeks to get all your money together. And that was the first week of August. What's the update on that? Has Sapporo realized that, being complete douchebags was not, there was a liability to that? Or what's happened?
Sapporo said, money now or we don't give a shit, basically. So they asked for more time. They asked for a stay. They said, give us a little bit of time. We're a whole bunch of just brewery workers. We don't have millions of dollars sitting around. But if you give us some time, we'll get the money together. Let us have first right of refusal on this deal, and we'll get it done. We promise. And Sapporo said, we gave you 2 weeks. You don't have the money together. Get fucked. And that's the end of it.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
Yep. So they'd rather watch it burn. Not after they set it on fire and the fire department showed up, they just said, no, just let it burn. We don't care.
If you drink a Sapporo, you're a fucking dick. If you drink a Sapporo-owned beer, you're a fucking dick. That includes Sown, fuck them, stop drinking it. On to your question.
Well, that took up our question of the week, so we'll save it for next week. Thank you, Greg, for reaching out. We'll get to your stuff next week, I promise. Our non-alc story of the week before we wrap things up. Lil Tay. Have you heard of this 14-year-old rapper that is famous on TikTok?
I have never heard of this 14-year-old rapper, and I don't give a shit.
Well, it's a tale as old as time. A famous young person is not in control of their life, being pushed around by their parents. Apparently, they weren't
Free Britney.
Apparently, they weren't very happy. And this week, it came out that they ended up killing themselves, or they died, but they weren't really sure. Basically, Lil Tay is dead. But Lil Tay wasn't dead. This has actually been a perpetration by her parents, and it's been a huge story that this person's death was faked unwillingly, not by their own control, by their parents, in order to continue to find fame for this TikTok rap star.
This has been done a few times in life.
Yes.
In history.
It's not the first time it's happened.
Mm-hmm. And as Mark Twain said, the rumors of my demise were greatly exaggerated. So,
I thought Elvis said that.
No, he was in fact dead. But there was also that whole, the Abbey Road cover and all of the conspiracy, playing the Beatles songs backwards. It said, Paul is dead. Paul McCartney was supposed to have been dead. And that was a whole...
Isn't he the only one left?
I think he is, ironically, the only one that's not dead.
Ringo.
Oh, Ringo. Yeah, nobody gives a fuck.
Well, join us next week as the aliens invade and they announce where the bouts that Jimmy Hoffa is. It's going to be a good week.
You know what's not news? Clarence Thomas took some bribes. Have a good week.